Let's call this meeting to order of the Metropolitan Audit Committee. Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, new business. Mark?
Okay, the first item on the agenda is I received a request from Councilman Pulley to do a review of Mayor Berry's and the security details, travel expenses, and overtime. And since I would treat that like a hotline request, and under the code, it gives me the authority to go ahead and start something like that. That's what the code tells me to. However, considering the personnel that's involved, I felt it best to bring it forth to the committee as an audit or investigation for your consideration and approval before I went off doing anything of that sort.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I may,
Yes.
I want to share too that I had separately asked Mr. Swan to propose a potential scope of services in advance of making a request, wearing my council member hat. And my thought had been that with the committee that got appointed in the council, that rather than having the possibility of multiple inquiries from multiple council members, that one suggestion is to have Mr. Swan interact with the council committee that's been appointed and give Mr. Swan the authority to work out scope of services with that committee, with the understanding that if he's not comfortable with the scope or has got a problem with the scope, that he could come back to us as committee, the audit committee, to talk about it. But I mean, I'm sure there's more than one way to skin the cat here.
Is that a form of a motion?
Well, I would, before I do that, I guess I would want to ask Mr. Swan what he thinks about that idea.
We're happy to help in any way we can. One of the other ways we can help is that we do have a consulting budget that we have over $200,000 unspent for this year. That's for the purpose of bringing in specialists when needed for audits and investigation services. So that's a combined effort, I think, that we could offer to whoever would like to use it.
Well, if I may, because this came up on the council floor the other night in terms of setting up the special committee, the value added of the auditor in participating with this is clearly very great. On the floor, I think we did make the point that consulting budget is a very valuable tool, and we don't want to forego other needed work for this project either, particularly since there is separate funding available to this committee. So I guess it's a fundamental question of how heavily do we draw down the resources in this area to fund this separate committee. And I personally was thinking that though money is scarce, your budget is not overly large, and to draw down those consulting resources for this committee when the charter gives another avenue for sources would be unfortunate, because I think don't you have more suggestions for audits than you could possibly accomplish?
We have, but we're in between contractors. We recently had an RFQ out for a new audit services, potentially multiple contractors to work with us, but that evaluation is not going to be done for the end of this month, and then into March before we get a contract. So then there's only 3 months left. So, I would hope that you might put a cap on how much you would want to use, but I can see $100,000 being easily available.
Vice Mayor.
I'm just going to reiterate what I put into the letter to the special committee, in sort of a different, from this perspective. Obviously, everybody wants a full and complete review of what happened and all the circumstances, but I think there's also an obligation to be frugal about our expenditures. So, I mean, what I would like to see are two things. One, I'd like to see for the scope that we approve here to be coextensive with what the special committee wants, so that we're not, now I don't know if that's totally possible, and we sort of have to work through that with the special committee, but ideally, that would be the case. On top of that, ideally, we would use whatever in-house resources we possibly could to complete the review. And I think only if there was a need for outside consulting, either because you don't have the bandwidth or because you don't have the expertise, then you could, what I would ask is that you just come back to the committee. My suggestion would be that you come back to the committee to get authority to spend from the consulting budget, unless you're telling us right now that you need to.
No, we're just saying that's the one option that's out there. We will be happy to help and assist in gathering information. There's lots of different ways to do it. I'll be happy to cooperate in any way we can to assist the special committee.
And just to clear up something that Councilman Cooper said, I think there may be authority in the charter for the special committee or for the vice mayor to retain special counsel, but there's not a line item out there from which those funds would come, other than we'd have to go find them somewhere. I agree with Councilman Cooper that we do need to preserve your resources to the greatest extent possible, but it may be that we'd have to come there anyway. So I mean, I'm agreeing with Councilman Mendez, and I think I'm agreeing with you too. So.
Well, and I was noticing this morning, and it's a question for you. I know we're not all the way through the fiscal year, but you ended last fiscal year with an unspent balance, I believe, which is effective management, which I appreciate. If there's the anticipation of there being an unspent balance, that I think also would be useful for the committee to know, because they want to be very careful about any new resources being created.
Well,
in the database.
last year we usually have turnover in our department. This year we've had a full staff, so that's usually our savings is from a traditional amount of turnover. Hopefully that will stay the same throughout the year. And we haven't really looked at, we could commit, because we haven't got the contracting done as quick as we'd hoped to have it done. Not to say there's any problem, it's just taking time during the holidays to get everything done, so that kind of delays that process. And I can anticipate maybe using half of that on the plan, but I can't foresee.
I'd make a motion, or you can, Bobby.
Go ahead.
I would move that we authorize the auditor to engage in the investigation requested by council members Pulley and Mendez as requested, and that we direct the auditor to work with a special committee to attempt to have an investigation that's coextensive with what is requested by the special committee. And that if for some reason, because of cost or breadth or some other reason, the auditor does not feel that that's possible, to come back to the committee to seek further direction.
Second.
Any discussion or clarification?
Do you comfortable with what he
Michael,
described?
I understand that you would like for me to, quote, work with the committee, do an investigation of the matters between travel expenses and overtime. Detail.
That's true. So, I mean, I guess I would add to that the scope would be to look at the matters identified in the council resolution that was adopted creating the special committee, which I think is the same as what Councilman Pulley identified and what Councilman Mendez was talking about.
Right, and I mean, this is for clarification, but I think you're clear on this. I asked Mr. Swan to propose a scope of services that would be more detailed than what was in the resolution, but still encompassed in it. And he sent me a page and a half letter that had a more detailed description of the sorts of things that he would look into to cover what was in the resolution. And the way I understand the motion is that the work with means reach an understanding with the council special committee about the detailed scope. So everybody was clear what you were looking into. And if same page with committee, then good to go. If there's some broader scope, more resources, new information at your discretion, then you come back to the audit committee for further direction.
You understand?
Okay, let me try to articulate.
Okay.
My understanding is that you would like me to work on an investigation, I don't know if I use this word, under the direction of the special committee to assist them in, I guess, co-review this matter. Would that be, and we've done that before with the TBI on the county clerk and other situations.
You have,
Yes.
under their direction?
Not only that, we scoped out different sections of what we looked at, what they looked at.
That's what we're talking about, is
Right.
working on a division of labor.
Right, and I mean, my objective is that the auditor, that you guys do everything that the council needs, unless there's something you can't do.
Okay.
And then the council committee would ask somebody else to do it.
Would be a resource, that's what I got, my understanding would be a resource for the special committee, and that's why I'm saying under their direction. So we'd give the scope to them, they would approve the scope and the plan and whatever we got.
Everybody clear on the motion?
Clear as mud, right?
Well, who does the minutes, Terry?
You know,
Are you guys clear on the motion?
before we record them to
Okay,
Well, we can amend the minutes if we're not happy with it next time, so. but-
we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next order of business.
Okay, great. The next item is the Health and Education Facility Board's audit and the audit of the recovery court case management. So I know we need to get some people in there.
That motion passed, by the way.
We need to get some.
We need a,
Does everybody have a desire to hang around, or? Okay, we're getting in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nan Wen, and I'm the in-charge auditor for these two audits. The Health and Educational Facility Board audit is quite different than others in a way that the Health and Educational Facility Board is not a component unit of Metro government, nor does it receive any resource from the Metro government. It is a conduit debt issuer under the name of the Metro government. Therefore, the objective for this audit is to find out if there will be any financial risk to the Metro government coming from the board's activities. We've looked into the board's debt issuance process, governance, and fiscal matters, and studied the TCA code regarding the board's activities, and was able to draw a conclusion that the Metro government is not liable for the debt service payments for bond issued by the board. The Metro government may be exposed to additional risk when the board enters into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with third party at the request of Metro government. However, this agreement has to be approved by the council. There is no recommendation for this audit. Any questions? And by the way, the representative from the board are here. This is Ms. Barnett, and this is Mr. Meyer, the chairman of the board.
questions?
Well, I have a quick question, kind of. I noticed the rocket ship tax lien filing in Davidson County, and hadn't rocket ship been an issuer under the board?
It was a borrower through the board, yes, sir.
Okay. And there was a tax lien filed here in Davidson County. Would that be an attachment to assets that were funded through the board?
That's a great question. The rocket ship debt was structured as a master indenture obligation. So all rocket ship entities are obligated for all rocket ship debt throughout the country. And so, yes, a tax lien would be, the revenues from any rocket ship entity would be available to pay a tax lien or any other type of lien, which would be secured by the property.
Okay, so it may be attaching to property that was funded through the funding of the board.
It may be, it may
Okay.
be. The real estate did not run through the board. The lien on the real estate runs to the bond trustee, so the board typically is not necessarily a beneficiary of the real estate, if that makes sense. The board is a passive entity.
Okay.
So any liens would be for the benefit of the bond trustee, and the bondholders could direct the bond trustee how to.
You mean
proceed.
passive and saying a flow-through entity?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. And most of your debt issued is taxable or tax exempt?
Most is tax exempt.
Okay. So that was another question. How do you get a tax lien on a non-tax-paying entity? But some of your entities are tax-paying, taxable.
Correct. For-profit and not-for-profit, depending on the type of facility.
Was your rocket ship issuance taxable or tax exempt? Do you
It was
remember?
tax exempt, but there's an owner and then a lessee, the way the real estate ownership was structured in the rocket ship entity. So that may be why they're attempting to attach to one of the other rocket ship entities. I've not looked at that particular issue.
Is it property tax or, I think it's
It's a
payroll
federal
tax.
tax lien.
It was a
I think.
federal tax lien.
But it's payroll, so
Was it payroll?
I think it's
Okay.
payroll, so it doesn't really
It's an
matter if you're,
operating expense.
it's not really doesn't matter if you're tax exempt or not.
Okay. And do you qualify issuers? I mean, when they come before to make sure they don't have this kind of problem?
The board does not do a credit analysis, if that's what you're asking. The board looks to the lenders that are lending, go back to the board as a pass-through. So the board has no staff. Mr. Meyer, their volunteer chairman, is their staff.
Well, and one final question. What's the advantage if you're taxable in using the Health and Education Facilities Board? Certainly, it's a great advantage seeking the tax exempt status. But if you're taxable, what value add does your pass-through give to that issuer?
That's a great question, and our most recent example on that exact point was when the Vanderbilt Medical Center split from the university, and the medical center chose to issue quite a bit of their debt taxable, but the board has a long, successful history in the marketplace, and till now has a very untarnished record, and so it adds some credibility in the broader national bond market, and Vanderbilt viewed that as an advantage, even though it was taxable.
Even though it was taxable? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
The next item, Van, also is on the next item on the agenda.
This is for the audit of the general sessions.
Wait, 1 second. Let's see if we need to rotate some people in and out.
Judge Robinson, I think, wants to come in. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Put on my friend.
These are the chairs.
First, please let me introduce the representatives from the General Sessions Recovery Court and Criminal Court Clerk's Office. So this is Mr. Judge Robinson, he's for the General Sessions Court, and this is Mr. Warner Hassel, he's also from the General Sessions Court, and this Mr. Bob Green, and he's from the Probation's Office in General Sessions Court. And these two are from the Criminal Court's Clerk's Office. This is must be Mr. Sloss, and this is Miss Patty Goodman. And so this is the second phase of the General Sessions Recovery Court audit. The objective of this audit is to make sure that Recovery Court and the Criminal Court clerk record the changes in dispositions authorized by the judge. Recovery Court tracks and monitors individual cases. We've looked into the process from the creation to the disposition of the case in Recovery Court and in the Criminal Court clerk's office. Tested a sample of the case files from Recovery Court as well as Criminal Court clerk's office. In addition, we've looked into judge's recusal and the releasing of the offender, including forms such as the condition of release. We found that controls are in place to make the process working. However, Recovery Court needs to develop a written policy procedure for the case management process and make document retention consistent. Any questions?
Yes, please.
So in the recommendations and proposed completion date, there was one item that was open that was going to be complete by 2/1/18. Did that get done?
Is that record retention?
Right.
Yes, it's in compliance with the probation.
The probation department has a 3-year record retention policy, and we spoke with the records department and we simply approved the code according to the same retention policy schedule of 3 years.
So the things that were listed in the observation about the inconsistency of how the files are retained, that's going to take care of that?
Yes, that's taken care of. We actually have moved into a paperless operation, so documents that are in the files are actually going to be scanned into the database and then actually retained electronically forever. The paper files will only be kept for 3 years.
Okay. Thank you.
So I think all this started during the, what division was previously had the Recovery Court, Judge?
Division 10.
Division 10.
Judge Moreland
When Judge
was the
Moreland,
Recovery Court.
when he resigned, that was sort of the context. Do you have sort of an update on how things have gone since then?
Yes, sir, I do. I took over the operation of Recovery Court in March of 2017. And along with Warner Hassel and Bob Green, who's the director of our probation department, the first thing that we did was to put all of the General Sessions personnel that was assigned to Recovery Court into, and back, well, I shouldn't say back, but into the Department of Probation, where they could be supervised. They're in all of the records files, all of the probation files for Recovery Court would be housed in one location. So that was our first step. Also, coming along for the past year, we have changed our procedures as it relates to how people are accepted into Recovery Court. They are required to, through their lawyer, to make an application with Lauren Barons, who is the program coordinator. They screen the individual to determine whether or not they would be acceptable into Recovery Court. If they are of the nature of the offense or in need of treatment, if that determination is made, then they're assessed to determine what the assessment needs are, whether it be IOP, inpatient treatment. Once they're assessed, that individual is brought to the team as a whole, which consists of myself, our treatment provider, the district attorney, representative of the district attorney's office, representative of the public defender's office, and our transitional housing people have some input. They're not really on the team as a Recovery Court team member, but they do have some input. Once the team has determined that this participant would be acceptable and would benefit from their participation in Recovery Court, they are accepted into Recovery Court. The two probation officers and the program coordinator, as I said, were transferred to the supervision of Bob Green, in the probation department. All of their files, all of the recovery court files, which is a form of probation, are housed in the probation department under his supervision. So quite a few changes, but we're looking to do some other things here in the near future to not only help the taxpayers, but also to help these individuals that are suffering tremendously from their addictions.
Well, thank you for that and for being willing to undertake the court. I know you weren't obligated to, so I want to say thank you. And
it has actually been my pleasure also, Vice Mayor, and I want to thank y'all. I thought it was very important when I took over in March with a change of leadership, to ask for not only a financial audit, but an audit of procedurally how the recovery court operates, where I can start anew and carry this program forward. So I appreciate everyone's efforts on the audit committee, and I appreciate what y'all have done and the hard work you've done for us.
Thank you.
I have a question. I just want to make sure I understand the funding. In terms of the written policy and procedure, is that recommendation made because there was just inconsistency in terms of processing at that time, and you were trying to get to a consistent flow in terms of that, or did you find that, things missing? I mean, I just want to make sure I understand.
During the transition of the leadership, they've been trying to develop a new procedure and process, trying to be in written form, make it work.
It's more of an informal, people just understood how things worked, and this was the way to just kind of get that formally documented. And I've been in that situation before, and sometimes it's hard to retrace steps.
I want to take an opportunity to brag on Bob Green. When I took over, the records in recovery court were an absolute yes. There were contracts where the participants were not signed. There were HIPAA releases that weren't signed. There were inconsistencies on our side as it relates to the paperwork on judgment forms that were not in the file. And Bob Green and the probation department and the new probation officers that were assigned to recovery court, and those files are top notch. Every document signed, all the judgment forms where whatever the folks that pled guilty to, they're in these files. It's night and day.
Yeah, I got to commend you all for that. I know that's
We had an existing
tough job.
case management policy manual in probation, and the probation officers of the recovery court incorporated those case management standards into the practice, because the case management is essentially the same between how they were supervised in recovery court and how they're supervised on probation.
And they're audit-proof now, right?
Yeah, and yes. So we've got some pieces to fine tune with some of the other non-case management processes, but policy procedure-wise, we're tight.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
thank you. Thank you.
Next we have on the agenda is the Metro Water Services payroll audit. All the people transition out, don't want to stay and visit with us. And Mary Cole was in charge of this audit.
Hello. I do have the audit of the Metro Water Services payroll process released on December 28, 2017. And we have Mr. Scott Potter, the director, and Ms. Amanda Deaton-Moyer with the department to represent them tonight. This audit appears on pages 22 to 24 of your workbook. To go into why we did the audit, the primary reason is the director, Mr. Potter, requested it. And also salaries and related benefits are a significant expense. They were 44% of the operating budget for fiscal year 2017. Our audit period was May 1st, 2015 through April 30th, 2017. our main objective was to determine if the controls pertaining to the payroll processes were in place and working effectively. And what we found, that they have controls over the payroll process, and however, payroll practices were not always consistent across all of their sections, and the use of the PeopleSoft system for leave balances is no longer cost efficient. We made 6 recommendations, and all 6 were accepted, so I'll just discuss the first observation. Observation A, inconsistent payroll practices across the sections. They have 21 sections. We visited all of them and discussed these procedures with all of their timekeepers, and we determined that they are not always consistent across all of the sections. The procedures relate to reporting leave balances, and bereavement leave was not always properly committed. There were some inconsistencies in other types of procedures, such as the annual confirmation of employee leave balances and the forms to elect either overtime or compensatory time. So we recommend that they continue to finalize its payroll standard procedure and ensure these procedures are followed across all of their sections consistently. And to determine the cause of the differences in leave time accrual balances and update those controls as needed. To review the retroactive pay for the past 2 years and determine if there's been overpayments or underpayments that are needed. And the use of PeopleSoft is no longer cost efficient. We believe they can save money, approximately $185,000 annually, by replacing it with Metro's Enterprise One and Kronos systems. And so that would provide the advantage of eliminating the need for staffing and also strengthen controls for audit trails. So I'll leave observation B and C in your review for your workbook. Anybody have any questions?
Well, I had a quick question. Did I hear you correctly say Mr. Potter requested the audit? I want to thank the department head. The audit committee, I think, always wants to be useful in a performance review and useful to the departments, and hopefully this has been the case. And it's nice to see from where I sit. So I want to thank the director and you, and I'm excited about identifying cost savings by the software change.
Okay.
I just had one question. Did I understand you to say you're discontinuing the PeopleSoft system and moving into the ERN?
That was a recommendation that they consider a way of being more cost efficient and switching to the Metro, what Metro currently has with the Enterprise One and Kronos. And I'll leave that discussion for the IT.
The main thing there is we're in the process of transitioning to our new e-business suites. So, you know, if everything had been stable and that hadn't been going forward, it would be something to be looking at cost savings. At this point, it's more keep going with what we have, and once the e-business suites is stabilized, then there'll be an evaluation to determine if there's some efficiencies that could be incorporated into the new type system and everything else.
Got all that right.
But the new system may be valuable beyond in many departments, not just water.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the new system has functionality that we don't have today because it will be an upgrade. So I think they'll want to come on board. But, you know, they don't need to do that twice. They don't need to go into an old system while we're transitioning into the new product.
Any questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Discussion of 2018 annual.
Well, before I discuss that, could I move forward and go ahead and do the hotline investigations, and then we'll come back to the audit plan?
Okay.
Okay. We had 2 investigations that were issued to you during this time. And I'll just skip to the one with the Nashville West End. We had a complainant who was concerned about the development on West End and Division Street, where we had to have a SP zoning that was approved with conditions. And part of those conditions was for traffic signalization and other things to happen. That was the main allegation we believed at the time when we did the investigation. We checked with law department and others and determined that the issue was who paid for that. And in this case, Public Works also was doing their traffic signalization project down different corridors, and West End happened to be one of those. So it was kind of included in that entire signalization, which we did do an audit of that project back a couple of years ago. And the law department agrees that the issue is not really a condition of who pays for it, but it was an issue of public safety to make sure that the public was protected. And so at this point, Public Works did pay for the traffic signalization and the crosswalk signals. The developer didn't contribute any money to it, but we believe that based on the law department, and it's believed that it was within their authority to do so. And so that's where we left it at.
Well, why wouldn't we implement it as rapidly as you could for public safety, but then go back and have the developer reimburse that cost?
Well, I don't know, I should say Sheridan's here to.
This is at, I'm sorry, 21st in Division, right? This is not, it's not West End, it's Second.
Right.
Right, right. And it was identified as one of our most dangerous crosswalks and pedestrian areas. And so at that point, we went ahead and put that in advance of the time that the developer would have put that in.
But the developer still could contribute the cost, and then that traffic light could be put somewhere else in the county and save lives there too.
And we have an item on the recommended audit plan that might help address that going this year.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if the SP puts it that way, and I wonder if the SP can do that. I mean, I think that if you, just going deep back into my memory here, I think that if you start doing that, it becomes an impact fee, which we have not authorized. And so we can require people to do things, but the in lieu part of it, or I'm just going way back here, John. I'm not sure about the details, but I think from a legal standpoint, the SP ordinance itself may not authorize that, the in lieu fee when the city goes out and gets in front of somebody. And it's probably something we need to think about, because you're right that if the Planning Commission decided it was appropriate to do, and we get out in front of the developer to do it, well, then the developer shouldn't get the benefit of that. The city should come out free and clear on that. But I'm not sure that under the current regime with the SP ordinances that's allowed.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that we're going to talk about that, because I think to some in the public, there's some, it feels like smoke and mirrors and mystery about when things go one way and when things go the other way.
I will let you know the complainant has said that he had more allegations than just the traffic signals, and I know there's been a going back and forth. But at the time, I guess there was either a miscommunication of what his main allegation was or not.
So do we continue to investigate the other allegations?
I'm thinking that we'll talk about that as part of the audit plan. It's one of the items we had on the audit plan. We consider it more of an audit, more than just looking at one specific project, encompassing that and looking at multiple.
Okay. Anything else on the fraud, waste, and abuse?
Well, I guess that's all for that one. Then the other one, there was an allegation on the Head Start compliance with the Metro Action Commission, mainly regarding participants' eligibility. Would that be a good way to describe it? And so we did go out and interview different Head Start managers at the different centers to kind of get what their process was, and then look at how they're doing to comply with the grants, the Head Start grants. And they have a software program that assists them in making sure that they check off all the boxes through that. And there's some pretty good controls to help ensure that whenever they do have a review come down from their provider, that they will be in compliance, hopefully. There's always that chance. But when we ran into an issue, another restraint on our office is that the only way to really test for compliance for eligibility is to look at what the parents are providing. In this case, it's going to be tax returns. And the tax returns by U.S. code, as auditors, we're not eligible to review those without the participant releasing those to us. And so That's why we didn't draw a conclusion one way or the other. We hit a restraint. However, the grant is reviewed, and I talked to Ms. Kroon today. They still have not had it. They're in the third year of a 5-year program, and they're expected to be reviewed. It's kind of a surprise. They call up on Friday and show up on Monday. So I said they're prepared, but they haven't had a review on the program in some time, though.
And those auditors, the federal auditors.
They have the authority to do so.
They can look at the tax returns.
Yes. And so, I mean, and they do. And so,
And they do.
Because I know that was a big issue in San Antonio. There was always, the eligibility was
There
always.
would be a clawback from them.
There's the potential. It depends on how bad it is. I mean, I think, I can tell you in San Antonio in some programs that it was really bad on eligibility, documentation of eligibility, but there was never a clawback because it was a service for the community in San Antonio.
Do you know if she's ever had a finding
Do you
in that area from any of her
It's been a while since she's had anybody from the Head Start
reviews?
federal, yeah.
Because they come in there pretty
been several years, so.
Nothing in this area?
Nothing. Now, I can tell you, we had an allegation that we reviewed maybe 9 years ago, something like that. No, it wasn't. We did an audit of their revenue, and one of the things, that was related to the attendance records. They just didn't maintain their attendance records, so it was kind of interesting. It was hard to confirm revenue when there's no attendance records.
We had to do a scope limitation on it.
And so the allegation was they were letting kids participate who were not economically eligible.
Potentially,
Is that right?
Potentially, yes.
That's what somebody said.
Yeah. And what we did find out too, though, is that you have the different Head Start. Some have waiting lists, and so they're there, and there's others that are not at capacity. So there is some ability to kind of be a little less restrictive on those centers. So, we didn't satisfy the answer, but we made an attempt to, and then we ran into a roadblock. So,
Okay.
and we'll continue to look at ways we can potentially to go forward on that.
Okay, now you want to go back to your
Back to the audit plan.
2018
Yeah,
audit
okay,
plan.
the next item
and
is,
this will be an action item, correct?
yes, sir. The one thing that you have an obligation is to hire and to recommend Metropolitan auditors to fire the Metropolitan auditor and to approve the audit plan.
And we're on which one?
Hopefully they'll approve the audit plan. And so we went through, we did not do a robust enterprise risk management, which we were hoping to, at this point, be in a better position if we were there. We did talk to the Chief Resiliency Officer and the Chief Strategic Officer, hoping that we might be able to piggyback on some of their work. That was not as successful as we hoped to be. We did go through our normal process of trying to prioritize, looking at who spends the most money, who has the most people, who has the most programs, meaning that they do the most service. So they're going to be naturally bubble up to a higher risk category for what we believe the public, to make sure that funds are not misused, resources are providing services. And so we went through that process, and then we sent a call out to all the directors, all the council members, to all the budget officers, asking if they had any suggestions. And we get a few of them and in the committee. And so after that, I made this recommendation to you for a potential audit plan. There's 20, I need to turn to it, 25 new audits. We committed to provide 11 new. We have 9 audits that are in progress right now, 2 that just kicked off. So those 9 will need to be completed from last year's plan. And then we're doing 11 new audits. And then in request from the committee throughout the year, there was a request for follow-up audits. So we put 4 follow-up audits that are on the recommended plan. So, and then we budgeted basically 1,200 hours for investigation work, which is about what we've been doing in the past. And then some hours for non-audit advisory services. So the bottom line is that we hope to have 24 audit reports to you this year, this time next year. That would be our goal, and including the 20 new audits, performance audits, and 4 follow-up audit reports, along with the time allocated for about half the time that we used to do for hotel audits is included in here for about 500 hours, some from last year's hotel audits. this is my recommendation. Again, how we work this is we commit to doing 20, there's more audits here still than what we have resources to do, but we will work to get as much as this done throughout the year and prioritize based as we announce audits. If people's timing, we can switch around if we have a full plate to work with.
Do I have a motion? Second.
I have a couple questions.
Discussion.
Number 14, Sports Authority, MLS soccer. Why is that in 18? I mean, I guess
There's nothing even.
we're not going to do anything in 18.
Okay, well, depending on when it was getting started, if it's going to be in the end of the, because this will go till January of,
A long way.
our audit plan goes to January of 19,
Calendar year.
the calendar year. We do our audit plan a little bit different than the fiscal year
Yeah.
because you are ready to talk to us now versus in the middle of the
Right.
budget year.
And so, I mean, I would say that one is, I'm
I
not
don't
sure
think
what
it-
you would do
Me either. It's
early
not-
on. I mean,
There's really
seems like a
nothing
lot
to
of
look at.
decisions might be made between now and December 31 of this year, but that there might not be a whole lot to audit before the end of the year.
Say, strike that
We
one.
weren't even close to that.
Can I ask a question
Yeah,
on
I've got some
14 and
questions.
15? Is this after the construction is completed, or are you doing what we did during the
We're hoping
convention
the
center?
convention center to be involved as
Be
it's going
involved
for. It's
on-
better to try to prevent problems than to
Okay.
try to recover dollars after the fact.
Okay.
Same thing with MNPS, is that a specific
MNPS is
project?
more looking at their construction program, trying to.
I want to
they're
make sure,
managing.
when I say co-source, that means you're going to use outside
That's the
resources.
goal, that's the goal.
I just want to make sure I
The ones we
understand
can
that
identify
aspect.
saying, based on the confidences we have developed in-house versus what we could use, or be a good resource from outside.
Okay, and I'm curious about number 6,
Number 6 on the.
what that scope
Oh, okay,
is.
yeah, okay, there's two of them that's interesting. Well, first, the one, let me go to number 7, because we did talk about this, is related to, we're looking at theirs to kind of look at zoning conditions enforcement when you do have an SP, and along with that, with the public works development infrastructure incentives, how those all work together, and saying, and just kind of what are the controls, what are the relationships between those, what are the requirements? That's the goal on that one. And then,
If I can just interrupt for a second. So as I'm envisioning this, would you be sampling the enforcement? So all these things get approved with conditions. What were the conditions and wherever
and we're going
they
to have, what are the
actually met?
what controls are in place in the metropolitan government to ensure those conditions are
But you would go back and sample some
Right.
number to see if that happened?
right. That was the goal behind that.
Okay.
And then looking along that with, because we do know there are some development infrastructure incentives that are offered on occasion, so how those interact with those SPs. So,
Okay.
and then the other one would be this was related to, when we were looking at what's good, since we're talking about the recovery court and we're looking at the nonprofit that was part of it in the physical side and the treatment side of the recovery court, and the questions came up about how nonprofits interact with the metropolitan government. Do we have policies against employees and board members? And it's more of a survey.
An informal survey, like maybe 2 years ago, and Metro's involvement with nonprofits come in a lot of different ways. You know, we have direct appropriations, we have actual contracts for services, we have community partnership funds, you
Is there
have...
one in the charter even?
Yeah, there's some in the charter. I mean,
Well, that was the goal
there are,
behind it.
I mean, we don't provide the service, we, give somebody else the money to do it. You know, there are
Like
grants.
$10,000 to the
Sometimes-
symphony in the charter or something?
Sometimes there are grants that flow through, so I was really curious about
Well, Vice Mayor
how big of that
Wiley-
universe you wanted to
Well,
take
one's kind of
up.
getting a survey saying what is out there, and one of the questions was, what policies do we have when we relate to nonprofits? Can Metro employees be on board members of the nonprofit that they're receiving a service for? And Mr. Committee Briley had talked about, is this a way that services are being provided that the council is not appropriating and providing oversight for? And so that's really kind of looking at that, where there's a nonprofit who's predominantly providing services just for the metropolitan government and nobody else. and what that relationship is and how this cooperation, and do we have,
Is that kind of the
do we have
scope?
like do we have, that's, it's a developing process. There was a informal question when we started looking at it. It looked like it was a lot bigger thing than just trying to answer a one-off type.
It's a big, I just want to, that was just a question. That was big.
I actually had more hours allocated, but I cut it back to try to say, well, let's keep it. So
That's
that's,
a big one.
So I'm hearing scope is work in progress.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying.
Yeah,
It could be a lot of different
most of our audits are that way. We do the planning, try to do a risk assessment, and then develop objectives from there.
I mean, this one part of what I'm hearing from Talia is, I mean, the thing that got this started, I'd be surprised if there's more than a handful that work like that, where it's like all the services of the organization are doing work for Metro, and there's dozens and dozens of
I'll give you an
others
example
where
of
it's-
MAC. MAC has got all kinds of contracts with people who provide Head Start services. Is that what you're talking about? Martha O'Brien is.
The entire Barnes House.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Or you've got entire functions. Kind of.
We can,
And that's a different one.
we can
So
do
which path?
Right?
exploratory scoping and then come back.
Really
with-
complicated.
I think that's, I'm not shading it toward one direction or another, but the stated scope is the entire Barnes Housing Fund, the entire
It's
Metro.
everything.
We're in the process of auditing the Barnes Fund right now, so
So I
master's
think,
plan.
getting it down.
Is it inappropriate, as Bob said, work in progress, for you to, since you're probably not going to start this between now and our next meeting, is to come back with a more focused sort of
We can do that.
mission for this, because it is a massive and probably being in more focused answerable questions would probably be an aid to the audit team when they get there.
And the reality is, I think, if there's some nonprofit that gets 1% of its revenue through a direct appropriation, that's different than an organization that is like the Recovery Court, where it's 100% tied to Metro.
Well, that's what we're trying to take some threshold, like, I started talking to the Friends of the Library, you got the Friends of the Parks, you got, there's all these that are, mainly their mission is to further a government service that's already there.
So do we want to,
And those fringe groups give us money, so you need to think about that from the opposite direction.
Well, no, I'm saying,
do you want to amend the audit plan and take this off? And then, so you can get started and come back and we have to amend it again? Do we do that frequently?
Sounds good.
you can take anything off, you can change, you can add, whatever you want.
I think you,
I just felt like it needed to be narrowed down in some way. I don't know what.
I mean, my motion would be to move to approve it with the understanding that before work starts on this Metropolitan Nashville government collaboration with nonprofits, entities, that Mr. Swan would consult with us further about the proposed scope for that one before work starts.
Yeah.
we have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Pass.
Okay. On the next one, I've already gave you the update on the projects. We have, on here, at the top of this plan, you can see the 9 projects that are in process. And so I'll skip to page 41 of the workbook. We did do the implementation follow-up. And so this is the list. Page 41 are the open recommendations. And then on page 47 through 51 or 50 are the ones where management decided to accept risks for something they accepted earlier or is no longer applicable in the last calendar year. And there's like 165 open recommendations still. There are very few that are real old. We sent out to 24 different departments, 14 departments responded. Most of those departments didn't really have anything that was due at this time. There's a couple that still haven't been very cooperative, though. I'll follow up with them again, and we have gone to every 6 months during this process.
Open means a recommendation from a prior audit that has not been completed?
Completed. They've accepted it. They had an action plan, and they're either pushed it, their initial date, they were not able to fulfill, so they've done a revised date. So the revised date is on here.
If you don't have a revised date, what does that mean?
If you don't have a revised, it most likely means that we did not get a response from that entity.
And then describe to me again what the stuff in the second chart is.
The second one is in the audit report, the client accepted the recommendation, but subsequent to the report issuance decided that either for whatever reason they did not want to do that anymore. They did some studies, or they thought it wasn't impractical, or a new change in management. So they accepted that risk, or laws just changed, things happened that was no longer applicable. New system came in. I'm trying to think of someone. One of them, a good one, since we got Sharon here, we had the parking audit, and one of the things was to research, well, one of the big issues in the metropolitan government is handicap parking, and I won't say the abuse of it, but there's a lot of people who park every day free with handicap on all the meters. So we had asked to consider doing some research. There's other government entities outside of Tennessee who are doing things to try to alleviate some of those issues that from potential misuse, is a way to put that. And we asked them to research that, look at potential legislation to the state to maybe help us so we could get more funds for that. And their conclusion was that we didn't have any budget money or resources to be able to do all that, and so they decided that they were no longer going to just go ahead and accept that risk and move forward.
So I have a question about the second chart and then a suggestion about the first one. So for these, on these multiple pages, it looks like there's, what, 6?
Yeah, there's 6 of them in the year.
Are there any of them where your office materially disagrees with the department? Or are you okay with where we're managing it? Another way.
The rebate. The fuel was true because the rebate, they no longer get rebates from fuel services from credit cards. The public works, that you have to ask. We thought there could be something done. The other part of that, I mean, I'm not there on day-to-day. I don't know. I assume that they made a good decision on that they wanted to accept the risk between looking at potential towing, other punishments, and handicap. The assessor of the property, we did look at that. That was where our consultant had talked about disputes and mapping for property parcels. We're going to the electronic digital parsing. They really do not have any responsibility for it by state law and charter. It's the planning department, so it was really placed in the wrong place. And so they said, well, we can continue to try to make sure everything's done right, but we really have no authority to tell the GIS group and planning how to write out parcels.
Sounds like you kind of agree with that.
Yeah. And then the last, or the MMPS, this is from the big MMPS performance audit, and that time was the goal of that audit was to identify all potential cost savings at MMPS, and the customer at that time had stated that there were savings to be had for if we were to look at outsourcing the food services division, and I believe that's the food service one. Yes, nutrition. And management said you need to look at continue for improvements to see if you could match what the privatized food service would do. Their conclusion is that that's not something direction they want to go, that is fully funded by the federal government, and so there's no need to look at any way of savings.
All right, my suggestion.
So that's a political issue.
Can I go back to page 44? I just want to know if this is a real thing. Did the law department really say 2029?
Good negotiation.
Oh, no, well, this is
For their revised date.
well, this is the one, this is the occupational safety program, and we said until it moves, the goal is to have it move to the Human Resources Department, and when Human Resources receives, and hopefully in this budget cycle, the goal hopefully to be addressed.
So they gave them some 10 years.
No, but then the the HR department would come back with new dates and action plans on the items.
I'm just,
Yeah, I mean, setting aside the 29 one,
it just caught my attention.
That was an agreement when I made with the law department.
we started doing this because we knew that there were dozens and dozens of things that weren't getting done, and now we've been doing this for a little bit. And I mean, I personally would have department heads come in and tell us why they're not doing what they said they were going to do with recommendations on audit reports, is what I would do. I don't know how you all feel about that, but I mean, we're spending a lot of money and time to come up with optional stuff for departments to say they're going to do and then not do.
Well, this is a really good list. I assume it's being used. If you have a follow-up audit, you go through these. You probably go through them anyway. I would also think that this would be used as part of your annual budgeting process.
I mean, realistically, that's not possible. I mean, the budget I mean, from the council perspective, we don't have that kind of ability to move the needle. I mean, if finance isn't using the budget process, it's not happening.
I'm just watching and listening.
I mean, there's no way for the council to see this list and tell a department, I'm sorry, you don't get your budget because you don't do this stuff, because we don't have that much control over it.
And I was saying, we are doing some follow-up audits on the plan for this year, and when we go and do an audit in the same area, we always do the follow-up. And sometimes we reopen based on what they had. We had that with general services on the fleet area. So,
Are there any more action items I need to step out?
Yes. Any other comments on this list?
This is not an action item yet.
Yeah.
This is just
So this is just advisory?
Yeah, this is just for your.
I will.
I
think it's good.
If you guys see it on the news, you heard it here first. Because just having it get ignored is not really that cool.
And we will continue to work with those departments. Some people have promised me that they would get new stuff. It hasn't happened.
Okay, any other items that we need to talk about today?
I'm trying to look. Yeah. The only other item is that I did put in the page 54 to 55. You do have an obligation to have an annual report to the council and the audit committee. And so that's the letters there. In the past, Mr. Reed has signed the letter, and we usually accompany our annual report for the Office of Internal Audit, which is not quite finished yet, but still in progress. But usually, like last year, it'll be something like this. And it would attach that as an attachment to that letter.
Is this something we need to allow time to look at, or?
Any appetite for attaching a list of uncompleted audit items to that letter?
It's your letter to the council, so.
I move we attach it to the letter.
Okay.
Second. Any other discussion? Okay. So the letter as a new attachment, all in favor? Any opposed? It passes. Any other action items we have?
Yeah, the rest that you can see in the book, the budget, where, like I said earlier, we're on budget. We don't anticipate asking for over budget. Next year's budget started. We're not asking for any modifications or enhancements.
I understand that's a good thing.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
We're adjourned.
Wait 5 seconds. You can turn off the.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.